The grand pavilion of Unity Station gleamed with artificial starlight, its crystalline dome offering a spectacular view of the swirling nebula beyond. Commander Rylan Novik adjusted the collar of his dress uniform, trying not to look as uncomfortable as he felt. After 15 years in Earth's diplomatic security corps, he still preferred the straightforward dangers of a battlefield to the veiled threats of a reception hall. "Admiring the scenery, Commander?" The voice came from Admiral Wexler, his superior officer. The older man's eyes crinkled with amusement as he handed Rylan a glass of something amber and expensive-looking. "Just assessing potential security risks, sir," Rylan replied, accepting the drink but not sipping it. His implants would neutralize most toxins, but old habits died hard. "Always the soldier," Wexler chuckled. "Try to relax. This treaty with the Novanians could change everything. First contact that doesn't end in bloodshed, it's what we've been working toward for decades." Rylan nodded, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found their target. Ambassador Tereth moved through the gathering with fluid grace, her indigo skin contrasting with the silver diplomatic sash across her shoulder. The Novanian representative stood a head taller than most humans present, her four-fingered hands gesturing elegantly as she spoke with a group of Federation officials. "She's quite something, isn't she?" Wexler murmured. "Their species evolved in a high-gravity environment. According to the briefing, she could probably break you in half without trying." "Comforting thoughts, sir," Rylan responded dryly. "Especially since I'm assigned to her security detail tomorrow." The Admiral's reply was cut short as Director Vassiliev of the Diplomatic Corps approached, a thin smile on his pale face. Something about the man had always set Rylan's nerves on edge. "Admiral, Commander," Vassiliev nodded to each of them. "I trust you're enjoying the festivities. The Carillon wine is particularly excellent this evening." "I'm still on duty, Director," Rylan declined politely. "Such dedication," Vassiliev's smile didn't reach his eyes. "But surely one toast wouldn't hurt. Here comes the ambassador now. It would be an insult to refuse." Rylan turned to see Ambassador Tereth approaching, her movement almost hypnotic in its fluid precision. Up close, he could see the subtle luminescent patterns beneath her indigo skin, shifting like constellations. "Commander Novik," her voice carried a musical quality that human vocal cords couldn't replicate. "I've heard impressive things about your service record." Rylan bowed slightly, formal training taking over. "Ambassador, your reputation precedes you as well." "Then we shall make a formidable team tomorrow," she replied, her silver eyes studying him with unnerving intensity. Director Vassiliev cleared his throat, gesturing to a server who approached with a tray of crystal glasses filled with iridescent blue liquid. "A traditional Novanian toast before business, perhaps." Something in Vassiliev's tone triggered Rylan's combat instincts. He watched as Tereth accepted a glass, nodding a barely perceptible hesitation in her movement. "To new alliances," Vassiliev raised his glass, a strange eagerness in his expression. Years of training screamed warnings in Rylan's mind, but protocol demanded compliance. He raised the glass to his lips, taking the smallest sip possible while his implants immediately began analyzing the compound. The burn hit his throat instantly, sharper and more caustic than any Carillon wine he'd tasted before. His enhanced metabolism kicked into overdrive, neutralizing the foreign substance even as his neural interface flashed warning signals across his field of vision. The sound of shattering crystal drew everyone's attention. Ambassador Tereth's glass had slipped from her fingers, blue liquid pooling at her feet. Her luminescent patterns flickered erratically, and her silver eyes widened in shock. "You," she gasped, looking at Vassiliev before her knees buckled. Rylan caught her before she hit the floor, his augmented strength easily supporting her tall frame. Around them, conversations halted as diplomats turned to stare. "What did you do?" Rylan demanded, feeling Tereth's body growing cold against him. His own throat burned, but otherwise his systems were compensating. His interface confirmed his suspicion: synaptic neurotoxin, lethal to most species, human immune response activated. Vassiliev's surprise seemed genuine. Fascinating. The rumors about human adaptive physiology were true after all. His expression hardened. Unfortunately, the ambassador won't be so resilient. The coalition sends their regards. In that moment, Rylan understood. This wasn't just an assassination. It was an attempt to sabotage the alliance by making it look like the Novanian ambassador had been poisoned at a human diplomatic function. Security breach, Rylan shouted, activating his emergency protocols. Medical team to the Grand Pavilion now. Vasiliv was already backing away, disappearing into the crowd of confused diplomats. Rylan would deal with him later. Right now, Tereth's life was his priority. "Stay with me, Ambassador," he murmured, lifting her into his arms. Her silver eyes fluttered open briefly, meeting his with startling clarity despite her condition. "The treaty," she whispered. "Will still happen," Rylan assured her, already moving toward the exit. "No one's dying on my watch today." The security team cleared a path as he carried her through the corridors of Unity Station, his neural interface already communicating with the medical AI on his ship. Tereth's breathing grew shallower with each passing second, the luminescent patterns on her skin dimming alarmingly. "Computer, analyze toxin and prepare counteragent," he commanded as he entered his private quarters, laying her gently on the medical bed. "Analysis complete," the AI responded. "Toxin identified as cerobian extract. No known antidote for Novanian physiology, fatal in approximately 4.3 minutes. Rylan cursed under his breath. Earth's intelligence briefings had mentioned cerobian extract, a favorite of assassins throughout the galaxy due to its untraceability and quick action. "What about my immune response?" he demanded. "My system is already neutralizing it." "Human adaptive immunity contains compounds that could potentially counteract the toxin's effects," the AI confirmed. "However, direct blood transfer between human and Novanian has never been attempted. Compatibility unknown. Risk of rejection high." Tereth's hand suddenly gripped his wrist with surprising strength. Her silver eyes locked onto his. "Do it," she commanded, her voice barely audible. "If I die, war between our peoples, inevitable." Rylan didn't hesitate. He reached for the medical synthesizer, allowing it to extract a sample of his blood. The machine hummed as it isolated the antibodies his system had already produced to combat the toxin. "Synthesizing counteragent," the AI announced. "Warning, procedure untested on Novanian physiology." "She's dying anyway," Rylan said grimly, taking the injector as it filled with the crimson fluid. "Sometimes you have to take the risk." He pressed the injector to Tereth's neck, watching as the mixture flowed into her bloodstream. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then her back arched, her entire body tensing as the foreign antibodies entered her system. The luminescent patterns beneath her skin flared brilliantly, pulsing with renewed energy as his blood fought the poison ravaging her body. Rylan held her hand, monitoring her vital signs on his neural interface. "Come on," he muttered, "fight it." After what felt like hours but was merely minutes, Tereth's breathing steadied. The patterns on her skin stabilized, glowing with a slightly different pattern than before, one that seemed strangely synchronized with Rylan's own heartbeat. Her silver eyes opened, focusing on him with newfound clarity. "Commander," she whispered, her voice stronger than before, "what have you done to me?" Rylan smiled with relief, still holding her hand. "Saved your life, Ambassador, and possibly the Alliance along with it." "I feel," she paused, her free hand moving to touch the spot where he'd injected her. "I feel you. How is this possible?" Before he could answer, the security alert system chimed urgently. "Commander Novik, multiple unauthorized personnel detected entering diplomatic quarter. Preliminary analysis indicates coalition operatives." Rylan's expression hardened. "They're making sure the job is finished." He turned back to Tereth, who was already pushing herself to a sitting position. "Can you move?" "Yes," she said, standing with remarkable steadiness. "Your blood has done more than save me, Commander. I believe it has changed me." As if to demonstrate, she flexed her hand. and the luminescent patterns beneath her skin pulsed in perfect rhythm with Ryland's heartbeat. "We need to move," he said, retrieving an emergency kit from a hidden compartment. "My ship is docked in the private bay. We can regroup there and figure out who's behind this." "Director Vasilev is merely a pawn," Tereth said with certainty. "The Coalition has infiltrated your diplomatic corps at the highest levels." "And we're going to prove it," Ryland replied, handing her a compact plasma weapon. "But first, we need to survive the night." As they prepared to leave, Ryland couldn't help but notice how the luminescent patterns on Tereth's skin seemed to brighten whenever he came near. Something unprecedented had happened when his blood mixed with hers, something neither human nor Novanian science had anticipated. "Commander," Tereth said quietly, "on my world, we have legends of blood bonds, connections that transcend physical boundaries. I believe your immunity has created such a bond between us." Ryland checked his weapon, processing this new information. "Well, Ambassador, let's use that bond to stay alive and expose the conspiracy. Ready." Her silver eyes gleamed with newfound determination. "Lead the way, Commander." Blood of the stars. The sleek lines of Ryland's personal shuttle, the Spectre, cut through Unity Station's private docking bay, its stealth systems already engaging as they approached. Tereth moved with surprising agility despite her recent brush with death, her tall form keeping pace with Ryland's practiced stride. "Incoming hostiles, 9 o'clock, she whispered, her silver eyes flashing. Ryland glanced at her with newfound respect. "How did you?" "I sense them," she replied, her four-fingered hand instinctively reaching for the plasma weapon he'd given her. "Your blood has enhanced my perception." They ducked behind a cargo container as a team of black-clad operatives swept into the bay, their movements betraying professional military training. Ryland's neural interface identified them instantly. Coalition special tactics, disguised as station security. "6 operatives fully armed," he murmured. "We're outnumbered." Tereth's luminescent patterns pulsed with a strange energy that somehow resonated with Ryland's own heartbeat. Perhaps not as much as they think. Without warning, she stepped out from cover and fired 3 rapid shots from her plasma weapon. 2 operatives dropped instantly, the third staggering backward with a wounded shoulder. Ryland moved simultaneously, his combat implants activating as he neutralized 2 more with brutal efficiency. The remaining operative raised his weapon, but froze as Tereth's eyes locked onto his. The luminescent patterns on her skin flared with blinding intensity, and the man collapsed, clutching his head in agony. "What did you just do?" Ryland asked as they raced toward the Spectre. "I'm not entirely sure," Tereth admitted, her voice carrying a note of wonder. "It appears your blood has amplified certain natural abilities of my people that are normally dormant." The shuttle's hatch slid open at Ryland's biometric signal, and they hurried inside. His hands flew over the controls, initiating the launch sequence while evading the station's automated security protocols. "Emergency override Novik Delta 7, he commanded, and the docking clamps released with a satisfying thunk. The Spectre slipped away from Unity Station, its stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible against the backdrop of stars. Only once they were safely in deep space did Ryland activate the autopilot and turn to Tereth, who was examining her hands with fascination. "The patterns," she explained, noticing his gaze. "They've changed. They're responding to your biorhythms." Ryland approached her cautiously. "The blood transfusion was meant to save your life, not create whatever this is." "On Novanese, we have ancient myths of soul merging," Tereth said quietly. "Warriors who shared blood in battle sometimes developed profound connections, but they were just stories, until now." She reached toward him, her four-fingered hand hovering near his face. "May I?" At his nod, she touched his temple lightly. The contact sent an electric current through both of them, and suddenly Ryland could feel her, not physically but mentally. Flashes of memories not his own flickered through his consciousness. A purple sky over crystalline cities, the weight of ceremonial armor, the responsibility of representing an entire species in negotiations that could determine their survival. Incredible, he breathed as she withdrew her hand. Is that normal for Novanians? No, she said, her silver eyes wide with astonishment. We're telepathic with our own kind, but never with other species. Your blood has created something unprecedented between us. Ryland's neural interface chimed with an incoming transmission. Commander Novik, this is Admiral Wexler. Your actions have triggered multiple security protocols. Return to Unity Station immediately. Tereth tensed beside him. He cannot be trusted. With all due respect, Admiral, Ryland responded, keeping his voice level. Ambassador Tereth was just targeted for assassination by someone with high-level access to the diplomatic reception. Until we determine who's compromised, we're maintaining distance. Wexler's voice hardened. This is a direct order, Commander. Return now or face court-martial. I'm afraid I must decline, sir. Novik out. He terminated the transmission and turned to Tereth. We need allies and evidence. I know someone, she said after a moment's consideration. Jorith Val, a former Novanian intelligence operative who went independent. If anyone can trace the conspiracy back to its source, it's him. Can he be trusted? Tereth's luminescent patterns pulsed. He saved my life during the Centauri conflict. He owes me a debt of honor. Ryland nodded, inputting new coordinates into the navigation system. Then let's find your intelligence operative before the Coalition finds us. The Spectre changed course, heading toward the outer territories where governance was looser, and secrets could be bought and sold like commodities. As they traveled, Ryland noticed Tereth observing him with intense curiosity. Something on your mind, Ambassador? The human capacity for adaptation continues to fascinate me, she admitted. Your species evolved on a single planet, yet developed immunities that can withstand toxins from across the galaxy. Now your blood has transformed me in ways neither of us fully understand. Humans had to adapt or die, Ryland explained, running a diagnostic on the ship's systems. Earth wasn't the paradise your homeworld appears to be in your memories. We fought for every advantage, every immunity. And yet you chose diplomacy over conquest when you reached the stars, she observed. Unlike the Coalition. Not all of us, Ryland said grimly. There are factions within Earth government that align more closely with Coalition ideology than they'd publicly admit. Tereth moved closer, her tall form graceful despite the confined space of the cockpit. The bond between us, it's growing stronger. I can sense your emotions more clearly now. Ryland met her gaze, his neural interface detecting elevated hormonal responses in his own system. Is that going to be a problem? Not a problem, she said softly, but a complication certainly. Among my people, such bonds are considered sacred and permanent. Before Ryland could respond, the ship's proximity alarm blared. A Coalition patrol vessel had appeared on their scanners, its weapons systems powering up. They found us, he muttered, taking manual control of the Spectre. Hold on. The shuttle dove sharply, evading the first volley of energy torpedoes. Ryland's enhanced reflexes allowed him to navigate through the barrage with precision, but the Coalition ship was gaining on them. We can't outrun them indefinitely, he said, executing another evasive maneuver. Tereth's expression shifted, her silver eyes narrowing in concentration. The luminescent patterns across her skin began pulsing rapidly, synchronizing with the ship's power systems in an inexplicable way. What are you doing? Ryland asked, feeling a strange energy building between them. Trust me, she whispered, placing her hands on the shuttle's control panel. Suddenly, the Spectre's engines surged with power far beyond their specifications. The shuttle leaped forward at impossible speed, leaving the Coalition vessel far behind. Ryland stared at the readouts in disbelief. How did you... Your blood, Tereth explained, her voice strained with effort. It's amplifying my natural energy manipulation abilities. I can channel power through organic systems, including your ship's bio-neural circuitry. The surge lasted only moments before the systems normalized, but it had been enough to escape their pursuers. Tereth slumped back in her seat, clearly exhausted. "That was impressive," Rylan said, setting a new course to throw off any further pursuit. "And unexpected." "For both of us," she agreed, her luminescent patterns dimming slightly as she recovered. "This bond is evolving rapidly. There's no telling what else might develop." Rylan checked their position. "We'll reach the Tau Ceti outpost in 6 hours. Your contact should be able to meet us there." "If he's still alive," Tereth nodded. "The Coalition's reach is extensive." They lapsed into silence, each contemplating the implications of their unprecedented connection. Rylan found himself increasingly aware of Tereth's presence, not just physically, but on some deeper level he couldn't quite define. It was as if a part of him now existed within her, and vice versa. "In Novanian culture," Tereth said eventually, "we believe that everything in the universe is connected through stellar energy, what you might call a soul. When two beings share blood as we have, those energies intermingle permanently." "And what does that mean for us?" Rylan asked, though some part of him already knew the answer. Her silver eyes met his. "It means that whatever happens next, Commander, our fates are now intertwined. For better or worse, we face it together." As they journeyed toward Tau Ceti, the bond between them continued to strengthen. Rylan found he could sense Tereth's emotions with increasing clarity, just as she could feel his. It was disconcerting but also strangely comforting, a connection unlike anything he'd experienced before. "We should rest," he suggested as they entered a relatively safe sector. "Take shifts, you're still recovering from the poison." "While you appear unaffected," she observed, "your immunity is remarkable." "One of the few benefits of evolving on a death world," he said with a hint of dark humor. "You first, I'll wake you if anything happens." Tereth nodded, retreating to the small crew quarters. As she left, Rylan felt a curious sense of loss, as if a part of himself had walked away. This bond was becoming more than a tactical advantage. It was becoming essential. His neural interface pinged with an encrypted message from an unknown source. The content was brief but chilling. "Coalition faction has compromised highest levels of both governments. Assassination was first stage. Fabricated evidence of human aggression to be planted on Novanes within 48 hours. War inevitable unless stopped. Trust no one." Rylan stared at the message, his mind racing. If true, they had even less time than he'd thought. Whoever had sent this was taking an enormous risk. "Tereth," he called, knowing she needed to see this. She appeared instantly, as if she'd sensed his alarm. One look at the message and her luminescent patterns flared with urgency. "We need to reach Joreth now," she said, "if they're planning to frame your people." "Then everything we've worked for is at risk," Rylan finished. "The question is who sent this warning, and can they be trusted?" Tereth's silver eyes gleamed with determination. "There's only one way to find out." Rylan nodded, pushing the Spectre's engines to maximum safe output. As they accelerated toward Tau Ceti, he couldn't shake the feeling that their blood bond was more than an accident of survival. It might be the only thing capable of preventing an interstellar war.